forward. And Lacey, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, thanks for joining, everyone. I'm excited to share with you some of the knowledge that I've gained over the past 10 plus years as it relates to product management. Just so you all know, we'd love to accept questions throughout the presentation. So Sarah's going to be monitoring the chat, and we'll probably get to those towards the end, and we'll have a time to dig in then. All right, well, let's get going. So here's my picture. You get to see my face on video and my picture. That's special. I'm one of the founding partners of Innovate Map. And I bring, as I mentioned, over a decade of product management expertise to guide our clients. I've helped dozens of companies think through the right product to build. We like to say what could be built versus what should be built, and really uncover the opportunities in their market and influence both their engineering, their design teams, and of course their customers and end users. But before we jump in, I'd love to give you a little bit of background on how I and the Innovate Map team have been able to have such great impact on our clients' success. So Innovate Map is what we call a digital product agencies, and we really help companies dream, design, and deliver winning digital products and services. And we do that through 4 really key disciplines. On the user side, we think about product management and product design, both what to build as well as designing intuitive and beautiful user experiences. And then on the buyer side, we think about product brand and product marketing. So really identifying and making your brand really resonate with buyers, and then telling a story in a way that those people can understand and that resonates with them and that makes them want to use your product. The title of this slide, Better Product is Marketable, Valuable, and Usable. We're going to dive into this. This is really kind of bread and butter thinking to Innovate Map, so we'll dig into that a little bit later as well. We really help a couple different types of companies, both high growth startups and scale-ups, and for them, we're really helping them deliver to market products that users love, buyers want, and teams can sell. And you can see here just a sampling of some of our customers and also some of their success, which is always super exciting for us to see the work that we help them do, help them to grow. And sometimes that means getting acquired by another company. We also partner with more established companies and really lean in with them on strategies to complement, differentiate, or transform their core business. And today, probably more than ever with COVID this year and everyone having to work from home and stop doing more of the traditional things that we've done to help to market and sell our products, digital has become come to the top of everyone's priority list. All right, we believe that a winning digital strategy requires competency in product. And I love that we're all here together at Product Week. I love a week focused around all things product. I'm very passionate about it, and you will hopefully feel some of that come through as we go through our content today. But we also believe that a really strong product organization or competency will really set you apart. So today we're going to share what makes a winning digital product and also some best practices to really keep in mind as you build your own product management function. And I don't know a lot about the people on the call today, but I would imagine that some of you might already work in product. Some of you might be at companies where you don't have this as a function yet, but you hopefully understand how important it is to you. And then maybe you work at a bigger company where you create products, but maybe product management isn't at your core yet. So this content should hopefully really resonate with all of you and give you something to take away and improve your world. Okay. Yes, there's a question. What is a digital product? We are actually going to answer that question in just a minute. So I will answer that. So the topics that we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about digital products, what makes a great product, evolution of the product process and the product management function, and then some things to really always keep top of mind. So I love that question, and we will dive right into that. So a digital product in our world is really any software-enabled product that provides value to users. And we think of these as web apps, mobile apps, a portal, or even software that supports hardware. So if any of you have like a Nest Cam, a Hue light bulbs in your house, or any of kind of the fancy IoT things that you can make your home smart with, you've seen that there are apps that often support some of that hardware. So that's another example of what we consider a digital product. And I hope that answered your question. If it didn't, feel free to ask another one. Over the past 10 years or so, some trends have become really foundational for digital products. And those really center around a few things. One, cloud software. Two, agile methodologies. And third, user experience. So we're going to briefly dive into each of these. Cloud software really gives you the power to continuously update your software without disrupting your users. So updates or new versions can be easily deployed, and users can automatically receive those upgrades. And this has really changed the game for software, because users expect that things continue to progress, and they also expect pretty immediate resolutions to any problems that might be happening. Agile really changed my world in the best way as a product manager. I don't know how much you all know about this, but it's really a cyclical process for development rather than a linear process. And thinking back, it was really hard to kind of get out of our old ways of doing things in a more waterfall process. But it really has changed the game, and it has stuck around, but for good reason. So Agile gives you the ability for your product to really respond to your customers' needs. It's not a set it and forget it plan anymore. And it allows you to really continuously adapt and adjust based on real user feedback and new information. So this allows you to focus on the highest priority work and ultimately to make the best possible decisions for your product. Finally, user experience. Amazing user experience, or UX, is now table stakes. We all have smartphones, and we all get spoiled by these consumer apps that we use every day. And those have really set some new expectations that all software should be easy to use and delightful to use, as delightful as the software that we use in the palms of our hands. So design thinking and user-centric design, maybe they were buzzwords 5 to 10 years ago. They're not trends. They're really the new way of approaching software design. You really need to deeply understand and think like your users in order to design something that will work and resonate with them. And if your software doesn't have great user experience, you risk an adoption threat. And really losing your customers to a solution that is easier to use, even though your solution set might be superior. So this is one that I really want everybody to think about and take away. Just because you're offering something doesn't mean that people are going to automatically love using it. And unfortunately or not, this is a new level that we've all reached with our software expectations. All right, so those were a couple of trends that have become really foundational for digital products. I'd love now to dive into what makes products great. And I'd like you to start out by thinking about some of the products that you love to use, some of your favorites. And we'd love to capture some of these in the Q&A just to get a list that we can kind of talk through later. Why do we love the products we love? And we really want to figure out, like, what is that special sauce that they're offering that gets us so hooked? If you've seen Field of Dreams, you know the saying that if you build it, they will come. The same is unfortunately not true for digital products. You can build it, but if you aren't stacking up well in a few key areas, they will most definitely not come. So here's the three keys that we believe great products all embody: valuable, usable, and marketable. The first two, valuable and usable, we really relate those to ensuring that the product resonates with your users. And then the marketable component ensures that it resonates with your buyers and those who influence that buying decision. So let's look at these in a little bit more detail. So great products are valuable. It solves a distinct and important problem for users to the point that they don't want to be without it. It makes their lives easier, and it is of high quality. Great products are usable. It's intuitive. I can learn it easily. And in this day and age, ideally without training. So if your rollout plan for your software includes a lot of training, you might want to think about whether or not you've designed it in the most easy and intuitive way. We want your organization to be able to adopt it easily. It should be easy to use. You shouldn't get frustrated. And it really should feel like it's designed for you or for others and their specific role. So sometimes when I'm using different apps or software, it's like a magical moment when you're like, oh my gosh, this thing gets me. I don't have to poke around. I don't have to watch a video for how to use this thing. It just works. And it can be kind of a delightful surprise. But over time, those products that are delightful and surprising in the way that they just work for you are really becoming the new model for how all software should work. On the flip side, we also have some truth there. So I always notice, and I'm sure you all do as well, when things aren't very usable. So I've had a few in sort of recent past here that were not usable, like signing my son up for baseball or registering for school. These things should not be so hard. Yes, I'm sure we all have our own experiences with things that are just very frustrating to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And of course, we want to avoid that. And finally, your product needs to be marketable. So this is a piece where great products often falter, but it's also such a key piece of your success. So if this isn't met, the product probably won't last very long in the market. It must resonate with buyers and users. It should demo well or be portrayed so well on your site or in an app store that a demo isn't even needed. It should have a wow factor that really captures the attention of your audience, and it needs to be priced appropriately. And finally, most importantly, it sells. And we also need to pay attention to like how well your team is equipped to sell it and how well they are sharing the value. So I want you to remember these. They matter. Great products are valuable, usable, and marketable. When all three of these things are true, it can be magic. It's what gets me really excited about the work that I get to do every day. All right, so we've now covered really the essence of what makes a great product, why we love the products that we love. I'd like to transition now into the how and the who behind bringing a digital product to life. So first, we're going to talk about the product process and the players of the past and then today. But we'll start with a look back. So in the past, we used to follow a very linear process to build product. It was somewhat of an assembly line method, and each phase generally was worked pretty discreetly and then handed off to the next phase, and often to another team or business unit. We went from idea to definition, where sometimes, but not always, a product manager was involved, to build, to test, to release, and maybe, just maybe, we'd come back and improve on what we had released to the world. The players typically involved in the process map pretty discreetly to the phases. So the business defined the vision and the idea, and sometimes this came from leadership, sometimes from marketing and sales. Product management was usually focused around the definition of that product before you built it. And a lot of time was spent in this phase to ensure that engineering had everything they needed to go heads down and build. Changes midstream were very challenging, both to teams, process, and your feelings if you're a product manager. The engineering side, not only were they responsible for building, but often designing the product as well. So once the requirements were nailed down, there wasn't much change. We executed on the full plan, really without a lot of back and forth to make real-time adjustments. Sales and marketing got involved in determining who would use the product and who would buy it. And they really aligned on how to talk about the product externally. They would create pricing and packaging. But recent product trends have really drastically evolved this process and the function of a product manager and how they fit into that process. So let's talk about today. Because software today is cloud-based and can and must respond to market and customer needs, that linear process has really evolved to be much more cyclical. We had specialized roles emerge. Product management really became a central function to the product process and to the org. So at this point, would love to kind of dive into what that process looks like today. So the modern product process is a cyclical one that does not end. Strategy and vision, the concept phase, developing, making it available, learning and evolving and iterating on your product, it doesn't stop. You just keep repeating the process. You really get that flywheel going and then you keep on trucking. And it's really important to note that several of these cycles could be happening at the same time in an organization. And small initiatives and large all follow the same process. So to support this and really optimize for the environment we're now able to work in, these specialized roles that I mentioned have emerged, with product management becoming a very central function. So you'll notice some of the same players. We've still got business, engineering, product management, and marketing, but their roles and responsibilities shifted as the process shifted, and then some other specialized roles emerged. As I've mentioned, product management really became a central component to this, coordinating, collaborating, and really aligning with teams across the business areas and becoming deeply involved in all parts of the product process rather than just that kind of upfront definition phase. So we'll talk high level about responsibilities of these players involved. But this is a product management session after all, so in a few minutes, we'll dive into what a PM does during each of these phases. Oops, sorry guys. So the business is responsible for defining the business goals and the vision. Product management is responsible for translating and carrying through that vision to the product vision, and also for deeply understanding and communicating what is valued and what is needed. They need to understand what could be built and align and rally people around what should be built. For UX, they are responsible for designing the product and optimizing user workflows to make sure that it's easy to use, that we love it, and that it is intuitive. Of course, engineering is still a very key component of this process. We rely on them to build the product well and ensure that it's scalable so that it's set up for the future to evolve with new and changing needs. Product marketing is one of those more specialized roles that have emerged in the last 5 to 10 years. And their responsibilities are broad, but often encompass things like how to price, how to package the offering, and how to convey the value so that it is understood and so that it resonates. Marketing and sales need to tell the world about it. Sometimes it's a small update, and sometimes it's a really big bang. But regardless, your users and your buyers need to understand how your product is changing in order to continue supporting their needs. All right, so let's talk more about the typical product management activities and responsibilities in each stage and how critical it is to really be arm in arm with all players on the team. And by the end of this, I think you'll understand why product management is in the middle of this very beautiful and colorful circle.
I think you're going into this, but a question of like who makes up the team, is that where you're going?
Yes. So there was a question about who makes up the product team. And I would say the typical product focused team is focused around user experience, engineering, and product management. So that's the typical, those are the typical players on a product team. And sometimes we will also layer in things like research into that process, or QA, depending on how big your team is and how specialized the different roles are. But as I mentioned, it is critical for this whole product group to be in really close touch with product marketing, marketing and sales, and of course the business, to make sure that you're really delivering on that business vision through the product. So we can talk more about kind of the teams that make up the R&D side of it here as we continue and get to some more questions. All right. So a product manager's role, as we think about strategy, we need to deeply understand the problem your product needs to solve. If you miss on this, nothing matters. Nothing else matters. If you're solving the wrong problem for your audience, you're out of luck. So that is a key kind of core to think about, that you are solving the right problem for your users and for your buyers. So some of the typical things that you'll be doing here, working with stakeholders to establish that product vision and the goals for the product. It's often in this phase too that we're doing some discovery and research. So really defining and aligning on that problem to be solved, which I just talked about being so important. Conducting user research early and often. So this is not a one-time thing. And I think that's a mistake that people often make, is that they think of research as kind of an input and something that they don't necessarily come back to over time. But we want to continuously be in touch with those users to make sure that we're understanding their current and evolving needs. And then also to conduct competitive research to really help determine how to position in market and what some of those differentiators can be for your product. In this phase, we're also ideating, which is a super fun component to the product management process, and prioritizing, and then also creating and socializing either long-term or short-term roadmaps and plans. So that is also one key role generally for a product manager, is to be that voice of where you're going, when you're going to get there, and what's going to be included. Then we get to the concept phase. So here we're really focused on defining the right product to build. In this phase, we're often collaborating with UX or user experience designers, but the product manager's responsibility here is really to clearly document and convey, tell stories around the goals, the personas. Who are we designing for? What is their life like? What requirements do we need to include in this part of the process for them? And then this happens to be one of my most favorite parts of the process, where you get to dive into designing and thinking through the flow through the product. So user workflows, how information is presented logically, that would be information architecture, design brainstorms, whiteboarding, and then obviously coming to some concepts that present that vision well. Another part of the process here is validating those concepts with internal stakeholders, and often real users as well, through some usability testing and validation. All right, the product manager's role in the dev process. So it's here that you are really representing the heart and voice of the user and the customers. The development team isn't always in close touch with your users and your customers. Of course, we would like them to be, and we would like them to know how your users are thinking and feeling. But that's often kind of one of the responsibilities of the product manager, to make sure that you are representing them well and continuing to tell their stories and be their voice. But through this process, there's also a lot of prioritization, and that can be anything from kind of higher level items and features to micro decisions and micro kind of capabilities that you'll have to think through. You're continuing to ensure that what the development team is working on is high priority and aligns to business goals. As I mentioned, kind of clearly conveying that vision, your users' needs, and those requirements to engineering so that they are understood well and that everyone has kind of the same end goal in mind as they work through the development process. I am a big fan of really working in the weeds with development and leaning on them for solutions as well. So in making trade-off decisions, often those trade-offs will come up through discussions with your development team, really leaning on their expertise for a different way to approach the same problem or a different way to accomplish this goal, and really compromising on that end way of implementing. And then we need to iterate to ensure that the functionality works as intended for the user. So this is one area that just brings back a little bit of PTSD for me, as I was working in the waterfall process with our development teams, and they would come back if I would mention that something just wasn't working like I thought it should, and they would tell me it functions as expected. And that's just not okay anymore. We can't always execute exactly to a plan. We need to have flexibility to make the right changes for our users.
Question for this one.
Well, we have a question.
In some larger enterprises, the product owner is the specific role working with engineering on a task level.
Mhm.
Is this the same for you?
Okay, so the question was, in some larger organizations, a product owner is the one working with development on kind of the day-to-day work. And that is often true. And it really depends on how both large the organization is and how mature your product management process is. So we often see the case where you will have kind of a product manager overseeing more of the product vision, and then a product owner being the one who works with development. And in my experience, both work together to prioritize the highest impact work and to ensure alignment to the business goals. And then it's kind of on the person who is interfacing more day to day with the development team to make sure that they're clearly conveying that story. They're clearly conveying the vision and the needs and those requirements to engineering. And depending on kind of the complexity of the decisions being made, that could be a product owner, or it could be that product owner working in conjunction with a product manager that they're partnered with. So I hope that answers your question. All right, once this product becomes available, or as it becomes available to your users, the product manager is often responsible for, at least in part, conveying the value of the solution. So when I was a baby product manager, I had a hard time with this when I would describe what we were working on and tried to work with marketing and product marketing on conveying that to customers. It's really easy to get in the trap of just talking about the features and the functions and what it does, rather than the value and how it's going to make people's lives better or change their process in a good way. So some of the key things to think about here are to really convey the impact of what's coming, rather than kind of the ticky-tacky aspects of what it does and what it is. So some questions to ask yourself there: why does it matter? What value does it provide? Who does it benefit? And how is this different than some of the other solutions out there? along with kind of making sure that you are being the best champion for the great work that you are deep in the weeds with. A lot of your role here is also to collaborate with product marketing on things like packaging and pricing implications, and then to review and often help refine the messaging that will end up going out to your customers and users. One last piece there that I want to mention. If the inputs to marketing are not good, the outputs are not going to be good. So this is one of those really key areas. We talk about products needing to be marketable. If we can't translate the great work that we've done and the amazing things that we are building for our customers to the people who are going to have the megaphone to our audience, we're really missing an opportunity. And then we've built this great thing that people aren't going to understand or realize the value of. So I cannot understate the importance of this piece of the process.
Hey, Lacey, does that necessarily mean that if the inputs are bad, does that necessarily mean that the product itself may or may not be needing to be built in the first place? Is it necessarily driving enough change or creating enough of a pain pill to be needed to be made?
So I think what you're referring to is potentially if it's solving the wrong problem. That hopefully would have been figured out well before you're trying to launch it to your customers. So that's why we do things like concept design and validation with users, is before we invest all of that time, energy, and money into building a product, we need to validate that we're solving the right problem and that the solution that we are about to go, invest our team's time in is going to resonate. So that's hopefully more of a front side of the circle.
Because those marketing pieces should come up pretty easily then.
Yes.
If you're solving the right problems.
Right, exactly. And another really great kind of small win that you get from talking to customers is like quotes, marketing gold for what you're about to release. So I can't imagine trying to design and build products without user input into the process. I mean, they're the ones they'll tell their story, they'll give you their challenges, and you'll pick out little nuggets. And sometimes those are like golden nuggets that will really spark an idea that helps to solve a bigger problem for them or solve a problem in a way that maybe you hadn't thought of before. So cannot understate the importance of talking to your customers or prospects if you don't have customers yet, and really learning and digging into what those pains are to inspire and inform the product and the solution that you'll build. All right, the role of a product manager in the evolution of your product. So this is maybe after you've released something to market. How do you continue to make it better? So your job here is to use judgment to understand how to adjust and evolve the product. And typically this involves things like monitoring some analytics that you've placed into the product to see how people are using it, conducting those very valuable user feedback conversations, and a little bit of a warning here on feedback. And I wrote a blog article a couple of years ago that I think is still super relevant here around handling feedback. This is a skill that takes a lot of time and just intention to make sure that you're reacting correctly to the feedback that you're receiving from users. So sometimes they'll ask you very directly for certain things, but what they ask you for is rarely exactly what you should build. And some questions to really ask yourself there are, okay, I hear you, but what is this user really trying to accomplish? And what is the motivation behind that request? And make sure you're really hearing these things from many angles before you go and kind of divert all development effort to fix a certain thing or to change a piece of your product to work differently. Customer support, if you have this role in your organization, is a gold mine of feedback and really good input from customers. So if you're finding that your audience is calling in for help on a certain aspect of your product, often, this is often a really great kind of area to focus your efforts on. All right, and of course we have to take action. As I mentioned in the kind of more linear or old process for developing products, once you release something, it's often just there for life. So as we think about the more modern process with software, we need to be constantly tending and caring and feeding our product and making sure that it continues to offer the highest value and highest impact capabilities to that audience. And sometimes that means removing things. So it's not always continuing to add. Often it is adjusting incrementally, adjusting maybe in a bigger way, or sunsetting something that just isn't valuable anymore. All right, so that's a lot. Product managers are responsible for a lot of things. No wonder we're all tired. It's a really gratifying role. It's a rewarding role. And you've got to be really all in on the teamwork nature of it. If you really see the product as your baby and you being the parent, being a helicopter parent of your product is a really good thing. You have to be super involved and understand and influence all of these working parts and details and relationships with others in your organization. All right, we're gonna have a few minutes for questions, but I'm gonna leave you with a few things before that to keep top of mind. Is the product compelling to your target audience? Now, these look like simple questions, but if you really dig into them and really answer them honestly, they can save you a lot of time, a lot of money, and maybe even divert your efforts to more compelling and more impactful work. Are we connecting with customers and getting relevant feedback? Have we made the product as easy to use as possible? Will this product succeed against the competition, both existing and emerging? And often in kind of bigger or more established corporations, these niche players can take over because they focus on a very kind of discrete aspect of someone's work or workflow, and they just kill it with the user experience and the ease of use. So we need to make sure that we are thinking about both the existing players out there, but also those niche players who might be more specialized in these areas. Will people really buy this product? And not the one that I imagine being in place in 2 years, but the one that we are actually building and that we are actually selling right now. And finally, and very importantly, are we constantly improving the product? And that doesn't always mean adding features. As I mentioned, sometimes it means improving or iterating on certain aspects that are really important to your customers, or removing things that aren't working any longer. All right, with that, I'd love to open it up for a few questions. And I apologize if I didn't see your questions. These views on Zoom are kind of hard to keep track of everything that's going on.
The second to last bullet you had there was really important, I think, to point out. And if you were on the session on Monday where we went over the lean principles, you really should only be building a product that you have verified you will sell. By having those customer discovery interviews, you are verifying that you are solving or approaching a problem that is really creating some pains. And you don't want to spend 4 or 5 years developing a product just to find out you don't have any customers. You just wasted a lot of money and a lot of time. So making sure you are testing, iterating, and customer discovery is a live document at all times. Whether you're in your first year or your 10th year of selling your product, you need to be always asking your customers where things can be changed or improved, or if it's truly solving the problem. So I love that last bullet point, or second one.
And as I mentioned, the concept phase can save you so much time, energy, tears, effort, money. If you design a concept that might, cost you some money, but not nearly as much as what developing and building that out will cost you. So make sure you're building the right thing before you get engineering, pounding on the keyboard.
You did just get a new question in from Angela. She asks, what strategies could we employ to balance what we need to build now versus innovating for the future?
Yeah, love that. So one of the approaches that we often take is to really balance your portfolio of things that are in process. And there's a few categories that you can kind of bucket things into. And one of them is a more innovative thinking features and forward-looking, maybe things that your customers aren't directly asking you for, but can have an impact, on them and on their problems. Then we have a bucket for customer feedback. So we always need to be listening to our customers and incrementally improving the product for them. Then we have things like bug fixes and other kind of technical debt issues. And one of the ways that we coach people on is to assign percentages to those, because it's never all or nothing, but you can certainly focus more of your effort on the innovative side or on the customer side, or even on the competitive side and kind of keeping up with some of those that you're competing with. That's a fourth bucket. But there will be times where what you need to do and what the highest impact work will be is focused on customer feedback. And there will be times when you really need to go, more in the direction of innovation and maybe lightly keep chugging away at some of the customer feedback or some of the customer debt, but knowing that your investment is more heavily weighted on the innovative side.
What other questions do we have for Lacey?
How does someone get into the role of product?
Okay, we have a question. How does someone get into the role of product management? How many times have I been asked this question? More and more, we're seeing universities offering programs around product management. So that's certainly a way to come into the workforce with some of that experience. But I will tell you, most of the product managers that I know, that didn't exist. So we came in through a variety of other roles. But it's, in my experience, starting out in roles in the software company where you really get to know the voice of the customer, whether that's customer success or training, being in the training department, or even in sales or account management. All of these, you'll hear feedback from customers over and over again. And some of the strongest product managers that I know, they had like a sense for how to handle this feedback and what they would do differently. So like a product sense about them. So I think a good way to get into product, if you're not there already, is immerse yourself in customer facing roles where you're really hearing and dealing a lot with the product, but maybe not responsible for it yet. And over time, your voice and representing kind of the voice of those customers will translate into people relying on you for the direction of the product and some of the improvements to make there. So that is how I've seen it happen time and time again. Of course, voicing your interest in product is certainly important as well. Research is another really great way. I've seen lots of different researchers and even developers kind of transition their careers into product management.
Jake Miller. Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
Kind of related question, but the skills that are best for that type of role, some soft skills.
The skills for a product manager? Oh man, I wish I have another presentation all about that. Let's see.
That too.
So the skills of a product manager, a lot of them are soft skills. Like you do not have to be an expert in technology to be a really effective product manager. You do need to be able to communicate well. So share a vision, represent the voice of the user, really tell their stories and share their pains with texture and color to get people rallied around that. That's another skill, being able to kind of rally people around a vision and influence others. So being a product manager, you're often not, no one reports to you. You might have product owners report to you, but the development team doesn't report to you. Product marketing doesn't report to you. So having influence and like bringing that passion is certainly important. Empathy for the customer cannot understate or overstate. You choose the right word. That one. Enough. It is so important. If you don't have empathy for what your users are going through or how hard it is for sales to explain a certain thing, this is probably not the role for you. And some great problem solving skills, the ability to make a decision, even if you don't have all the data that you wish you had, is also really important. If you would like more on that, I have lots of thoughts and we can set up some more time to talk through that.
Jake Miller has a question. He asks, have you ever worked on any hardware-enabled digital products? What are best practices for marrying the agile development of software with the waterfall process for hardware?
Yes, we have. So we have worked on a few. One related to a smart faucet. And in that case, the hardware was pretty much done when we got involved in that process of designing the experience to really get it set up and teach it new tricks, just like your dog. But I can understand the challenges there because often when you are supplementing hardware with software, you may be working in a company that is used to the hardware process, which isn't as iterative. You can't pull stuff back off the shelf and improve it and then put it back on the shelf. You have to have it really fully baked out and tested. I would say that the software component to that, so the supporting app that is going to help, it probably will, start to be built towards the back end of that hardware product being ready. But the design and the concepts around it and thinking through the process can certainly get you a head start on that. And that software should be continuously improved. The hardware is out there. The people have it installed in their houses, but the software side of things needs to continue to iterate, to continue getting feedback from your customers and to continue solving new problems for them. So they definitely kind of follow different paths, the hardware methodology versus the software methodology, but I would really caution against kind of falling into the hardware methodology for those supporting tech plays. I remember, I hope no one from Philips is on the phone. Philips Hue. I've had these light bulbs in my house for a really long time. My husband gave me a gift of Philips Hue light bulbs for Christmas one year, and I didn't know what they were. I opened the box and I was like, light bulbs, yay. But I cannot tell you, these things have changed my life. I could not love them more. But they came out with a new version of their app that did not go over well at all. They actually pulled it out of the market and ended up re-releasing about a year later with something that was, an evolution from the one they started with, but not like a total revolution. So the original Philips Hue app was very basic, but it worked and it was easy to use. They came up with something much more clever and just a little bit overly designed, and it was hard to figure out how to make it work for the same use cases that you were used to. So that's an example where maybe it went too far and they didn't really evolve. They stopped and they started something new and it didn't go over that well. So
you're adulting when you get excited over light bulbs.
Hey, I'm telling y'all, buy yourself some.
My question, I love to ask tangible questions that are almost a little bit of hand-holding, because I think entrepreneurs in their early stages always need a little hand-holding. Can you go over your wheel step by step and kind of go through both the digital products you may use when going through this product management cycle, as well as maybe some of the tools that you use with your teams? For example, I'm a process improvement engineer, so I love root cause analysis and 5 whys and fishbone diagrams. What are some of the tools, both with your teams as well as product tools that you use.
Yep. So I think as we look to kind of the product side of this and the research side, so strategy and business, we'll take what we can get there. Often that comes through, tools that we're all familiar with, like PowerPoint, to share a story and a vision. But as we get into concepts and research and user experience, one of our favorite tools for research is called Dovetail. And it allows you to tag and categorize and theme and gain insights out of what you're hearing, and also just have a cohesive home for all of the feedback that you're hearing, rather than a document here and a document there and a spreadsheet here and a presentation there. That can get out of hand pretty quickly. As it relates to concept design, our designers rely on a couple. They use Sketch and Figma. And then we also use tools to share those designs through the old internet via things like InVision. So there are tools to share concept designs, and they can actually be made to function more like a prototype. So you can use them in demos, and our customers often do that. You can use them in validation testing. There are so many tools, but there's user validation testing, things like user voice, and goodness, the list is very long, but there are tools for almost anything you could want to accomplish. Some of the more helpful tools as it relates to like designing the right flow and brainstorming and conducting working sessions or workshops to prioritize. We love Miro. So that's a really great like facilitation tool, especially when we're all remote, to prioritize, to brainstorm, to collaborate that way. We love Whimsical. It's a great workflow diagramming software, and it does other wonderful things as well. But all of these tools kind of fall into that category that I mentioned of marketable, valuable, usable. They're just so easy to use and so easy to adapt to your own process. As we get from concepts to development, obviously there's so many different tools to track development, user stories and things. We work with dev teams, and it's kind of like pick your poison there, pick your favorite. Jira is a tried and true. Ooh, I'm spacing on some of the other names, but there are a lot of them out there. And it's really about, you could use Trello for this if you're in the early stages. The important thing is that you have the right details in there, and that everyone understands the content of those user stories and has a common understanding of them. I think I'm going to stop there. There's just a few for you to chew on, but those are some of our favorites.
Yeah, we are actually going to be using Miro during our first ever Startup Weekend Kentucky event next weekend. So we've been having fun with setting up our Miro board. And Whimsical, this is the second time this week we've heard from the different presenters about Whimsical. So we'll definitely have to check that one out as well.
Yep, it's amazing. And of course, Slack, our favorite collaboration tool. If you haven't heard of Slack yet, now you know. It's I think most of us probably use it or something similar, but we couldn't live without that one either.
Awesome. Any final questions for Lacey? Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lacey. I'm going to go ahead and hit stop.
Welcome.